All right, ready to dive into something kinda epic?
Oh, I'm always up for epic.
We're talking about, get this, the most influential leaders in history.
No small feat.
But we're not just, doing the name and date thing.
Right. Gotta go deeper.
We're talking about what made him tick, what made him, shapes the whole world.
And why they still matter to us,
Yeah.
even today.
Exactly. And the source we're using is awesome. It's this text that digs into the lives and philosophies of all these amazing people.
It's like a journey through time, you know?
Yeah.
We'll see these figures who built giant empires, others who led armies, rallied whole nations just with their words.
And some who sparked revolutions just through sheer willpower and sticking to their principles.
Exactly.
And the way they're grouped in this text.
Yeah.
Super cool. You start seeing these connections, these contrasting styles of leadership.
It makes you think, right?
Totally. So first up, buckle up. We're tackling the empire builders, the ones who redrew the map, literally.
And their impact still shapes our world today. And we're going to start with a name everyone's heard, of course, Alexander the Great.
Of course.
But we're not just going to rehash the conquest, right? I mean, think about it. This guy wanted to rule the entire world, the known world, by the time he was 30.
That's ambitious.
Ambitious is an understatement.
It's wild. And it wasn't even just about, military power. He was strategic about culture, too, blending it all together.
Yeah, he didn't just force Greek culture on everybody. He encouraged this mix, this blend of Greek and local traditions.
Which led to, what was it called? The Hellenistic era.
Exactly, this period of insane cultural exchange and innovation. So his legacy, it goes way beyond just battles and conquests.
Makes you wonder, though, what were the long-term consequences of all that blending? Did it actually lead to more understanding, or were there some downsides, too?
Lots to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so next up, we're going from ancient Greece to, well, the vast steppes of Central Asia.
Quite a shift.
Total shift. And we're meeting, drumroll, Genghis Khan.
Now that's a story, right? Talk about rags to riches. But on a global scale,
Yeah.
going from these fractured nomadic tribes to forging the largest land empire in history, contiguous no less.
I mean, it's insane. And we all know about the military genius, the tactics, the cavalry.
Unmatched, really.
But it gets even more interesting when you look at his system. What was it? Meritocratic?
Yeah, meritocracy. In a time when power was usually inherited, he actually recognized and rewarded talent. Didn't matter your family name or social standing.
Whoa. Pretty progressive.
Right. And it raises questions, how did that system actually work? Was it truly a level playing field, or were there limits?
And how did it stack up against the other social structures at the time? I mean, he wasn't just conquering land, he was challenging how power worked.
Fascinating stuff.
Definitely. Okay, ready for another shift? From the Mongolian steppes, we're heading to 18th century Europe.
Where to?
To meet another guy with dreams of empire, a name everyone knows, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Napoleon. His rise is incredible. From a, pretty humble background as an artillery officer, he climbs the ranks during the French Revolution, ends up crowning himself emperor.
Wow, talk about ambition.
It's a story of ambition, strategic brilliance, and just this relentless drive to change the world.
And he did change it, not just with the armies, but with laws, too. The Napoleonic Code, right.
Yeah.
Standardized laws across France.
And it still influences legal systems today, all around the world. That's a legacy that affects millions of people.
It's huge.
But to really get Napoleon, you have to understand his, obsession with those who came before him, especially Alexander the Great.
Oh, interesting.
He saw himself as a successor, like a kindred spirit, both driven by this desire for conquest and glory.
It's like he was modeling himself after Alexander. But were their styles really that similar? And did Napoleon's ambition, his drive for power, did it lead to his downfall, just like some say it did for Alexander?
These are the questions we'll dig into, right?
All right, exactly. As we explore Napoleon's legacy, which, let me tell you, is super complex and fascinating.
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
It's wild, right? How that drive for power, it can show up in so many different ways.
Totally.
I mean, we just saw it with the empire builders, but now we're shifting gears a bit.
Right, to a different kind of power.
Exactly. We're looking at leaders who were masters of influence.
Yeah.
Not necessarily armies and conquests, but words, diplomacy, personality, shaping events through negotiation, alliances, persuasion.
And their stories, just as captivating. Think about it.
Yeah.
Political intrigue, strategy, the power of words to sway people.
Oh, for sure.
And we're kicking it off with a ruler who's fascinated people for centuries, Cleopatra. Last pharaoh of ancient Egypt.
Ah, Cleopatra.
I think we need to, go beyond the Hollywood version, and really grasp her political skills.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
she is so much more than just, a beautiful queen. This was a brilliant woman,
Hmm.
highly intelligent, politically astute. She understood Roman politics, and she used that knowledge to her advantage.
It's impressive.
Think about it. Fluent in multiple languages, navigating the treacherous waters of Roman power, all to keep Egypt independent.
She was playing the Game of Thrones for real in a world dominated by men.
Oh, absolutely.
It makes
Yeah.
you think, what were her strategies? How did she make those alliances with powerful guys like Caesar and Mark Antony?
And what can we learn from that? From her ability to wield power in such a tough environment.
So much to learn.
Her story shows us that power, it doesn't always come from brute force. It can come from intellect, diplomacy, understanding the political landscape.
For sure. Okay, so now, fast forward. We're jumping to the 20th century, and we're meeting another leader known for his words, Winston Churchill.
Churchill.
Yeah, you can't talk about him without talking about his speeches. During World War II, with Britain facing, the very real possibility of Nazi invasion. Legendary.
Iconic.
But let's dig deeper. How did his words, actually give people courage, hope, in a nation that was on the brink?
It's about inspiration, right? True leadership, it's not just about giving orders. It's about giving people a reason to believe, to fight, to keep going.
He did that with words.
He was a master. His speeches, they were crafted to evoke emotion, to create this sense of shared purpose, to rally everyone against a common enemy.
It's interesting because, we live in a world that's flooded with information communication.
It's overwhelming sometimes.
What can we learn from Churchill's approach to rhetoric? How can we apply that to our own communication, especially in times of crisis or when we need to persuade people?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. Okay, so for our last stop in this exploration of leaders who wielded power through words, we're going to 19th century America
Okay.
to meet Abraham Lincoln.
Lincoln, facing some incredible challenges.
No kidding. His presidency,
Right.
marked by the Civil War. Talk about a tough time to be in charge.
It was a defining moment in American history.
He had to preserve the Union, but also deal with this incredibly divisive issue, slavery. It's talk about a moral dilemma.
It really was. Lincoln's leadership wasn't just about military strategy, right? It was about these huge moral questions. How do you balance unity with this fundamental belief in equality for everyone?
That's heavy stuff.
His struggle to navigate that tension, to make those incredibly difficult choices, that's what makes him such a compelling figure.
It's a reminder that leadership, it's often about making those tough calls, even when there are no easy answers. And it makes you think, right, how do his moral dilemmas connect with what we're facing today? Are there parallels?
There are always parallels. I mean, history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding the struggles, the human struggles, and how they still shape us.
Right.
And sometimes those struggles, they require a ton of courage, especially when you're challenging the status quo, fighting for what's right, even when it seems impossible.
Yeah. Which brings us to our next group of leaders, right? The ones who led with their principles, stood up for their beliefs, and they changed the world.
They did.
These are the figures who inspire us to, stand up for what we believe in, hold on to our values, no matter what.
That's powerful stuff.
And we're starting with, a leader who embodies that principle maybe more than any other, Mahatma Gandhi, a man who changed the world without violence.
It's incredible. His philosophy of nonviolent resistance, satyagraha, it was a revolution. He showed everyone that moral authority combined with that unwavering commitment to truth and justice, it could be more powerful than any army.
It's amazing. He led India's independence movement against British rule, using peaceful protests, civil disobedience, this belief in the power of truth.
And his impact, it went way beyond India. It inspired movements for social change all over the world.
Oh, yeah. You see his influence in the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King Jr. and the fight against apartheid in South Africa and so many others.
Countless movements fighting for justice and equality.
And he'd do it all without violence.
That's the power of principled leadership. You don't need armies or political dominance. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the courage of your convictions.
Well said. And speaking of courage, our next leader, he embodies resilience, the power of forgiveness in the face of, unimaginable hardship. Nelson Mandela.
Mandela.
His story is one of incredible transformation, from political prisoner to the first president of a democratic South Africa. He dedicated his life to ending apartheid, spent years in prison for his beliefs.
It's hard to even fathom.
And what's remarkable is that he came out of that experience not with bitterness or anger, but with this commitment to forgiveness and reconciliation.
Imagine that. 27 years in prison for fighting for your freedom. And then when you're finally released, you choose to build a just society instead of seeking revenge.
It's mind-blowing.
That's the essence of Mandela's leadership. Forgiveness over revenge. It was crucial for preventing violence in South Africa and for creating a peaceful transition to democracy.
It makes you think, how can we apply that principle of forgiveness? Not just in politics, but in our own lives, in our relationships.
It's a challenge.
Definitely a challenge, but worth thinking about. Okay, so for our final leader in this group, we're going back in time to meet a queen who, well, she defied expectations and ruled with strength. Queen Elizabeth I.
Ah, Elizabeth. A fascinating figure.
She inherited a really tough situation. England was divided by religion, facing threats from other countries, and lots of people doubted a woman could rule effectively in that kind of chaos.
It was a tumultuous time.
But she proved them wrong.
She did. She navigated those religious tensions between Protestants and Catholics, kept things stable, and, oh yeah, defeated the Spanish Armada.
Not bad.
Her reign, the Elizabethan era, is considered a golden age for England. Culture, economic growth, national pride.
And we can't forget the Virgin Queen image, right? That was a strategic move in a world dominated by men.
It was brilliant. It allowed her to maintain her autonomy, control, power.
She challenged what people expected from a female ruler.
She really did. Elizabeth's story shows us that leadership, it's not about fitting into a box. It's about defining your own terms, using your strengths, playing the game your way.
She was a master strategist, diplomat, and image maker.
And her reign, it left a lasting impact on history.
So we've traveled through history, explored these different types of leaders, the empire builders, the ones who used words, and the ones who led with their principles. What's amazing is that despite all their differences, they share some common threads.
It's true. They all had this vision for the future. They weren't just reacting to what was happening. They had a plan, a goal, a set of values that guided their actions.
It wasn't just about having the vision, though. It was about being adaptable, too.
Right. I mean, the world's always changing. And these leaders, they got that. They knew to stay ahead. They had to be flexible, willing to shift their strategies, even their beliefs, to meet the challenges coming at them.
Makes sense. You can't just, stick with the same old playbook forever.
Exactly. Clinging to outdated methods, refusing to adapt. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in a position of power.
True. So they were learning, evolving, embracing change. That's what helped them make a real impact.
And that's a lesson for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Wherever we are in life.
Totally. Never stop learning, questioning, growing.
Absolutely. It's kind of remarkable, though, isn't it, how these stories, they still speak to us today, even though they lived in such different times.
It is. I mean, their challenges were different, but the core principles, they're timeless.
Oh, for sure. Vision, courage, adaptability, the willingness to make tough choices. Those are things we all grapple with, no matter what we're trying to achieve.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let me ask you this. Which leader's story really resonated with you? And is there something specific about their approach you could, I don't know, maybe apply in your own life?
It's a good question to think about. I mean, maybe you're leading a team at work or a project in your community, or even just navigating your own life, your own challenges.
Right.
These lessons, they aren't just for, presidents and CEOs. They're for everyone.
I love that. So whether it's thinking strategically like Alexander the Great, or communicating powerfully like Churchill, making those tough choices like Lincoln, or leading with principle like Gandhi.
There's something to learn from each of them.
Totally. Because leadership, it's not this exclusive thing. It's in all of us.
Yeah.
And what better way to tap into that potential than by learning from those who came before us?
Exactly. Those who really made a mark on history.
And that's the beauty of a good deep dive.
It is. You go beyond the surface, you find those hidden gems, and you walk away inspired.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, your week, carry these stories with you. Let them, spark your imagination, challenge you a little bit, and maybe even empower you to embrace your own leadership potential.
That's the goal.
It is. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep leading.